Imagine a world where the veil between reality and nightmare thins, where every shadow hides a secret, and every sound could be your last. Welcome to a collection of 10 chilling tales that will claw at your mind and linger long after the lights go out. From a masked figure staring through a high-rise window to a child's cry echoing from a silent monitor, these stories unearth the terrors lurking in the places we call home. You'll walk with children hunting a demon in a Ukrainian forest, feel the weight of a cursed house's gaze, and hear whispers that know your name. Each tale is a door to the unknown, where the ordinary twists into the unthinkable. Are you brave enough to step through? These are not just stories, they're warnings, woven from the threads of fear that bind us all. As the clock ticks and the darkness deepens, ask yourself, what's hiding in the corners of your world? Turn up the volume, lock the doors, and prepare to lose sleep. These 10 tales will test your courage, and once you start, there's no turning back. Dare to listen, and let the nightmares begin. Picture a quiet American suburb in the 90s, where cookie-cutter houses lined endless streets, and the only sounds at dusk were kids' laughter and the hum of sprinklers. I was 10, a scrawny kid with glasses, more likely to run than fight. My world revolved around my sister Lily, a year younger, and our little house where Mom cooked meatloaf and Dad watched football. I grew up in the suburbs where outside of parks or sports fields there was nothing to do. Me and my neighbors played knock and run or ding-dong ditch. You'd sneak up, bang on a door, and sprint away, heart racing, hoping not to get caught. I was the lookout, too chicken to take the lead, but loving the thrill of watching my braver friends dive into danger. Our crew included James, my neighbor and best friend, who matched my age and nerdy obsession with comic books. His sister, Taylor, 14, tagged along sometimes, mostly to flirt with Lily, who she thought was adorable. I was the biggest coward, always wiggling out of ringing the doorbell. I'd make excuses, my shoelaces were untied, or I'd fake a cough. They'd roll their eyes, but I didn't care. Watching was my game, and I was good at it. One crisp fall afternoon, my cousins rolled into town. Daniel, 11, acted like he was 20, with a swagger that made adults take him seriously. His younger brother Mikey trailed behind, too small to join our schemes. Everyone treated Daniel like an adult, which was weird to me. He had this aura, like he could talk his way out of anything. As the sun dipped, painting the sky orange, we climbed to the park on the hill, a patchy field with a rusty slide and a view of the whole suburb. We decided knock and run was a good idea, but we never ventured far, scared of getting lost in the identical streets. Tonight, though, Daniel had other plans. "We're hitting the big one," he said, pointing to the white mansion at the street's end. It stood out like a diamond in a pile of coal. Marble walls, a fountain gurgling in the front yard, and a driveway that curved like a movie star's smile. We decided our first target would be the fanciest house, a white marble place with a fountain and curved driveway. Rumors swirled about its owner. A recluse, maybe a retired doctor, maybe something darker. The house was always dark, its windows like empty eyes. My stomach churned, but Daniel's grin was infectious. We voted on who'd ring the bell. Guess who got picked? Of course I was picked, but I got Daniel to take my place. He smirked, cracking his knuckles like a pro wrestler, and I exhaled, relieved to stay in the shadows. But as we crept down the street, the air felt heavier. The mansion loomed, silent and cold, and I swear I saw a curtain twitch. I always found watching more entertaining than doing it, I told myself, trying to ignore the prickling on my neck. Something was watching us back. We crouched behind cars parked along the curb, breath fogging in the chilly air. My knees dug into the gravel, and I peeked under a sedan's undercarriage, eyes locked on Daniel. I sat by a car, small enough to see under it, watching Daniel sneak to the door. He moved like a cat, silent, confident, and pressed the doorbell 3 times. Ding, ding, ding. The sound echoed, sharp and wrong in the quiet night. He sprinted back, grinning like he'd robbed a bank. But before he hit the gate, the front door flew open, and an older man in a black leather apron splattered with what looked like red paint sprinted after him. He didn't run. He glided, too fast for any man his age, his shadow stretching long and thin under the streetlights. I knew something was wrong. He practically flew down the path, reaching for Daniel. My breath caught. The group went still, like deer in headlights. Daniel's scream when he realized he was being chased still haunts me. That proud, cocky kid let out a sound so raw, so terrified, it carved itself into my memory. Daniel jumped the gate, which probably saved him. The man fumbled with the latch, his movements jerky, and for a moment, I thought we were safe. But then he looked up straight at us, his eyes glinting like a predator's. He yelled, his deep, angry voice carrying words I could barely make out. "Sick people in there." The phrase hit like a punch, cryptic and chilling, raising more questions than answers. Taylor, bold as ever, screamed from across the street, her voice cracking the tension. "Leave him alone!" It was enough to startle the man, and we bolted. My legs burned, lungs aching as I tore through the streets. I found myself in the shopping center's parking lot, hiding among the cars, the neon signs buzzing overhead. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound a footstep. I waited 30 minutes, watching cars come and go, feeling safer with people around. When I finally dragged myself home, I was the last one back. Daniel and Taylor had run straight home, and Mom, after hearing the story, went to confront the man. Mom came back different. Her face was drained of color, and she wouldn't talk about it. Her hands trembled as she locked the doors, and we slept at James's house that night. I lay awake, replaying the man's words. Sick people in there. What did it mean? And why did Mom look like she'd seen the devil himself? Morning came, but the house felt wrong, like the air was thicker. Mom still wouldn't talk, but she became fiercely protective. No more games, no wandering off without an adult. Lily whined, her pigtails bouncing as she stomped her feet, but I saw the fear in Mom's eyes. I pressed her, and she revealed the man had threatened. "I'll show you both what it's like to have someone on your property, and I'll shut those kids up forever." Those words sank into me, cold and heavy, like I'd swallowed ice. This wasn't just a grumpy old man. He was dangerous, maybe unhinged. I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. At night, I'd lie in bed, ears straining for sounds. Footsteps crunched outside once, too deliberate to be the wind. But when I peeked, the yard was empty. Another time, our trash cans were knocked over, garbage spilling like a crime scene. "Raccoons," Mom said, but her voice wavered. I started having nightmares. His face rough as leather, eyes like black holes, hands dripping with that red stuff. In my dreams, he stood at our door, whispering, "I know where you are." James and Taylor were different too. James stopped cracking jokes, his comic books untouched. Taylor became obsessed with the mansion, always staring out her window. "I saw lights in there," she told me one night, her voice low. Not normal lights, green, flickering, like something's moving. My skin crawled. The mansion wasn't just a house anymore. It was a puzzle, a dark secret we'd stumbled into. Mom was a lot more protective, and we weren't allowed to play knock and run or go far without a parent. But the rules couldn't erase the feeling that something was coming for us. Weeks passed, and I thought maybe the storm had blown over. My parents, trying to restore normalcy, let me run small errands alone. One day, Dad asked me to grab a loaf of bread. I headed to the supermarket, the fluorescent lights humming as I wove through aisles. I stopped at the toy aisle to admire stuff I'd dreamed of owning. My usual ritual of daydreaming over plastic action figures. But as I stood there, two hands shoved me to the ground. The dusty, sticky floor hurt. When I looked up, it was the man from the White House, Mr. Carver. His eyes burned, his smile twisted like a Halloween mask. He shouted, but I couldn't understand, only hearing his furious growl. My heart stopped. I scrambled to my feet, but he kicked my leg, making me fall again. Pain shot through me, and I thought this was it. Then a cashier's voice cut through. "Hey, what's going on?" I grabbed the bread and ran out, not daring to look back. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop until I was home, lungs burning. I spilled everything to my parents, and they banned solo trips. But it wasn't the bruises that kept me awake. It was his eyes locking onto me like I was prey. I became obsessed, sketching his face in my notebook, trying to piece together who he was. Over dinner, I overheard Mom and Dad whispering about the mansion. Years ago, there were rumors of disappearances tied to that house. No proof, but Carver's name came up. Always hushed, always feared. Couldn't stop thinking, what was he hiding? Fall painted the streets gold, but the beauty felt like a lie. Lily and I walked home from school, the creek trail our quiet escape. One day at the trail's entrance, I saw a silver SUV parked there. I thought it was empty, but the door opened and the man shouted, "Hey, wanna ride home?" Carver's voice, syrupy sweet, sent chills down my spine. Lily, ever trusting, stepped toward the truck, but I yanked her back. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He said, "What's wrong? I just want to walk you home." I pulled Lily down the trail, my pulse roaring. He didn't leave the truck, just let out a growl and drove off. But at the trail's end, I saw the silver SUV parked on the street. My stomach dropped. We were trapped. Desperate, I led Lily across the creek, slipping on rocks, thorns tearing at our clothes. We emerged muddy but alive, the SUV gone. I told my parents, and they called the police, but without proof. It was just a story. I knew he was watching, and the question burned. What did he want? I couldn't let it go. I dug through old newspapers. At the library, finding whispers of missing people, all linked to the mansion. One article mentioned a doctor named Carver, disgraced, vanished after a scandal. Was it him? The pieces didn't fit, but the puzzle was taking shape. The fear seeped into our home. My parents checked locks obsessively, their faces tight with worry. One night, Dad tried to lift our spirits with a living room campout. Movies, pizza, the works. I sat by the large window overlooking the front yard, enjoying the calm. Then I saw it, a shadow moving in the driveway. I looked out and saw Carver in white pants and a white shirt, staring at the front door. His gaze was unblinking, drilling through the glass to me. He raised his hand, waved, and put a finger to his lips, signaling shush, then jogged away. I froze, my voice gone. Fear pinned me to the couch, and when Dad asked what was wrong, I lied, saying I was sleepy. But sleep never came. His face haunted me, those eyes promising something awful. The next morning, I scoured the yard for tracks. Nothing. Then I found a crumpled note under the door. "I still see you," it read in jagged scrawl. My blood ran cold. This was no game. I told Taylor, and she was done hiding. "We need to know what he's doing," she said. That night we snuck to the mansion, hearts pounding. The house was dark, but a green glow pulsed from the basement and faint moans drifted out. I felt his presence like a weight on my chest. Taylor gripped my arm. "We can't run forever," she said. I nodded, knowing we had to face the monster. We went back the next night, flashlights in hand, a kitchen knife tucked in my jacket. Every step felt like walking into a lion's den. We slipped over the fence, creeping to the basement window. The green light flickered, and the moans were unmistakable, human, desperate. I pressed my face to the glass and my world tilted. The room was a gallery of horror, walls smeared with red, not paint but blood. A skeletal figure, chained, whimpered in the corner. He'd yelled about sick people in the house, but these were prisoners, his victims. Taylor hissed, "Cops now!" But a beam of light hit us, and there was Carver, his grin a slash of malice. "Nosy kids," he snarled, grabbing for me. I swung the knife, catching his arm, and we ran, legs pumping, until we collapsed at Taylor's house. The police stormed the mansion that night, and what they found broke the town. The basement was a dungeon holding captives for years, people the world forgot. Carver, a twisted predator, thrived on their pain. His words about sick people were a lie. He was the sickness. 3 survived, but the blood on those walls told of others lost. The town reeled, headlines screaming about the monster next door. We left that suburb, the mansion a scar in my memory. I swore off knock and run, but the real lesson was deeper. Curiosity saved those people, but it came at a cost. Every creak, in the night every shadow brings his face back. I still see him and I wonder, how many Carvers hide behind ordinary doors? What's the scariest thing you faced? Drop your story in the comments and hit like and subscribe for more tales. That'll haunt your dreams. The city's edge was a forgotten sprawl, where the Crestwood apartment complex squatted under a frost-bitten November sky. Its crumbling concrete towers, pockmarked by years of neglect, stood like sentinels in a ghost town, their shadows stretching, long and jagged across cracked pavement. The air was sharp, slicing through my thin denim jacket as I shivered beside Claire, my best friend and the sharper half of our duo. At 16, I was all wide-eyed naivety, while Claire, with her blonde ponytail, swinging and hazel eyes scanning every shadow, carried a quiet vigilance that made her seem older than her years. We'd slipped out of a house party at a friend's apartment, hoping to catch a ride home with some guys we'd met. But the plan unraveled when the partygoers, slurring through their beer-soaked haze, refused to drive us. Left with no choice, we decided to walk home, a 20-minute drive across the highway. The cold was merciless, turning our breaths into fleeting clouds that dissolved into the night. My short skirt and flimsy sneakers were no match for the biting wind, and I hugged myself, teeth chattering. Claire, in her leather boots and scarf, strode with purpose, but I caught the way her gaze darted to the darkened alleys flanking us. Crestwood was infamous, whispered about in school hallways as a place where trouble lurked after sundown. Stories of muggings, shadowy figures, and worse floated like ghosts in my mind. But I pushed them down, telling myself we'd be fine. It was just a walk, right? We'd barely made it past the first building when a faint sound pricked my ears. The low, deliberate crunch of tires on gravel. I glanced back, seeing only the void of the unlit street. "Claire, you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the wind's howl. She didn't respond, but her hand found mine, her grip tight and unyielding. Her silence was louder than any warning, and my stomach twisted with a sudden primal dread. Something was wrong. The night, once just cold and empty, now felt alive with menace, as if the darkness itself was watching us. The sound of tires grew, louder, a slow, predatory rhythm that echoed off the concrete walls. A black sedan emerged from the shadows, its sleek frame glinting faintly under a flickering streetlight. Its headlights were off, a deliberate choice that sent a chill down my spine. I was naive, barely worried at first, but Claire, sharper than me, hissed for me to pick up the pace. My heart thudded as we hurried, my heels scraping the uneven sidewalk, each step a clumsy betrayal of our position. The sedan matched our speed, creeping along like a panther stalking its prey, never close enough to touch but near enough to suffocate with its presence. I stole a glance at Claire, her jaw set, eyes narrowed. She wasn't just scared, she was calculating, her mind racing through options I couldn't even fathom. "Don't look back," she whispered, her voice low but firm. "Just keep moving." I obeyed, though every fiber of my being screamed to turn around to see if the car was still there. The night seemed to close in, the buildings looming taller, the alleys deeper, as if Crestwood itself was conspiring against us. Then, a new sound, faint but unmistakable. A low chuckle, malevolent, drifting from the car's open window. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence, not some late-night driver lost in the complex. Whoever was in that sedan wanted us to know they were watching, toying with us. I thought of the rumors about Crestwood, disappearances, girls who'd vanished after walking home alone. My mind raced with images of headlines, police tape, and faces I'd never see again. Claire's grip tightened, pulling me back to the present. "There's a parking lot ahead," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor I felt in her hand. "We can lose them there." The sedan surged forward, its engine roaring as it cut us off, screeching to a halt across our path. 2 doors swung open, and 2 men stepped out. The taller one, draped in a black leather jacket, had eyes that gleamed with a predator's hunger, his silhouette towering under the dim streetlight. The other, shorter but no less menacing, flashed a grin that was all teeth, his hands twitching as if eager for violence. My legs froze, my breath caught in my throat, but Claire was already moving. "Run!" she snapped, yanking me toward a cluster of parked cars. We dove behind a rusted pickup truck, its hulking frame our only shield. We crouched there, hearts pounding, praying they hadn't seen us. The men's footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, like hunters savoring the chase. The tall one spoke, his voice a low growl that carried through the still air. "They're close, I can feel it." My stomach churned. Claire pressed a finger to her lips, her eyes darting for an escape route. We crept around the truck, staying low, desperate to stay out of sight. Every sound was amplified. The crunch of gravel under boots, the faint jingle of keys in a pocket, the rustle of fabric as the men circled closer. I glimpsed the shorter man through a gap in the cars, his grin gone, replaced by a focused scowl. In his hand, something glinted, a knife, its blade catching the moonlight. My vision blurred with panic, but Claire's steady hand on my arm grounded me. She pointed to a narrow alley between 2 buildings, barely wide enough for us to slip through. "On my count," she whispered. 1, 2. We bolted, my sneakers skidding on the pavement as we squeezed into the alley, the walls scraping my arms. Behind us, a shout, angry, guttural, followed by the slam of car doors. The sedan's engine roared to life, its tires screeching as it looped around the complex. It kept circling, refusing to let us go. My lungs burned, my body screaming for rest, but Claire's voice cut through the fog. "We're not done yet," she said, her eyes blazing with defiance. "We need to find cover now." Claire led us through the maze of Crestwood, her instincts sharper than any map. We reached the pool house, a dilapidated structure tucked behind the complex's farthest building, its wooden fence sagging and overgrown with thorny vines. We slipped behind the fence, biting back every sound as the sedan prowled the complex. The engine's growl was a relentless predator circling closer, then fading, only to return with a vengeance. Each pass felt like a noose tightening around. Huddled in the dark, I noticed something chilling on the sedan's rear window as it passed under a streetlight. A sticker, a triangle with a single eye at its center. It wasn't just a design, it was a symbol, one I'd seen before, scrawled on a faded missing persons flyer at the community center. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of half-remembered warnings. These men weren't random thugs. They were part of something organized, something sinister, and we'd stumbled into their hunting ground. The cold was unbearable now, seeping into my bones as we shivered under a tattered tarp we'd found discarded by the pool. We curled up beneath it, calling for help, but no one picked up. My phone's battery was dying, its screen a faint glow in the oppressive dark. Despair clawed at me, whispering that we'd never make it out. Then a new sound, a car door slamming followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. One of the men was back, moving on foot. I peeked through a gap in the fence and saw him, the tall one, his leather jacket gleaming wetly in the moonlight. His hand, a knife gleamed, its blade long and serrated, promising violence. He stopped mere feet from our hiding spot, his head tilting as if listening for us. His breathing was slow, deliberate, like a beast savoring the scent of its prey. I clamped a hand over my mouth, stifling a whimper. Claire's eyes locked on mine, her expression a silent command to stay strong. The seconds stretched into eternity, each one a gamble with our lives. Then a miracle, a distant car alarm blared, shattering the silence. The man swore under his breath, his boots retreating as the sedan's engine revved and sped away. But the relief was fleeting. I knew they weren't gone for good. Dawn broke slowly, painting the sky a bruised purple. A faint hope flickered as my phone buzzed with a text. Finally, a friend answered and agreed to pick us up. But finding the pool house in Crestwood's labyrinth was like navigating a nightmare. We whispered directions over the phone, past the rusted mailbox, left at the graffitied wall, our voices trembling with the fear that the sedan would return. When we saw our friend's car, we sprinted, diving into the back seat and screaming to drive. The car peeled out, tires screeching as we sped through the complex's gates. I glanced back, my heart stopping. The black sedan was parked at the complex's edge, its headlights flaring to life, pinning us in their glare. It didn't follow, but its presence was a silent promise. They knew who we were, and they weren't done. My hands shook as we drove, Claire's arm around me, her warmth the only thing keeping me from falling apart. We made it home by 6 a.m., slipping inside before my parents woke. I collapsed into Claire's arms, tears streaming, knowing without her, I might have been kidnapped or worse. Days later, I couldn't shake the image of that symbol. At the library, I dug through old newspapers, my fingers trembling as I found what I feared. An article about a trafficking ring operating in Crestwood, marked by that same triangle eye symbol. The report detailed how they targeted vulnerable girls, stalking them for weeks before striking. One survivor's quote haunted me. Even after I escaped, I felt their eyes on me, always watching. My blood ran cold. Had they been watching us before that night? Had they chosen us? That night shattered my innocence. I used to believe the world was safe, that bad things only happened to other people. Now I check every shadow, lock every door twice. Claire and I kept the tarp we'd hidden under, a grim reminder of the night we fought to survive. We never spoke of it again, but the bond it forged between us is unbreakable. Yet sometimes, walking home alone, I hear the faint crunch of tires, feel that cold, predatory gaze. The article said the ring was never caught, and I can't help but wonder, did we really escape, or are they still out there waiting for their moment to finish what they started? Some memories cling like damp leaves on a rainy day, impossible to shake. I was 8 in 1995, growing up in Mill Creek, Ohio, a town so small it barely made the map. The nearest Walmart was a dusty hour's drive, and summer evenings buzzed with cicadas, the only soundtrack to our lives. I'm Emma, and my family was my universe. Mom, Clara, with her cinnamon-scented hugs. Dad, Henry, always dusted with sawdust from his carpentry gigs. And Noah, my 12-year-old brother, who'd tease me mercilessly but fight anyone who dared mess with me. My family moved into an old house, and I immediately felt watched. The gray house, as locals called it, was a crumbling giant, peeling paint, sagging eaves, and windows that groaned in the wind. It stood alone on a hill surrounded by gnarled oaks, like a forgotten king ruling over nothing. We'd fled the city after Dad's hardware store went bankrupt, and the gray house was a steal, a chance to start over. Something about that place felt alive, like it was sizing us up. I remember our first day hauling boxes under a sky bruised with clouds. Noah sprinted inside, claiming the attic room with its slanted ceiling. I stayed on the porch, staring at the front door's warped wood carved with faint swirling patterns. The air felt heavy, like the house was breathing. Townsfolk warned us. Old Mr. Jenkins at the gas station said, "That place ain't right, never has been." Mom brushed it off, but I saw her glance back at the house, her smile tight. I didn't have words for the dread pooling in my gut, but I knew we weren't alone in there. The gray house didn't wait long to show its teeth. Our first night, I lay in my room, the walls blotched with water stains that looked like screaming faces. In the dark, I heard footsteps creaking in the attic above me, slow and deliberate, like someone pacing. Each step echoed in my chest, too rhythmic to be pipes or wind. I buried myself under the blankets, whispering prayers Mom taught me. The footsteps came back every night, always after midnight. I told Noah, but he smirked, saying, "Old houses. Creak, dummy." Dad climbed to the attic, his flashlight beam cutting through dust. "Just mice," he said, but his voice was too quick, too forced. Then came the doors. Doors we'd locked would swing open by morning, their hinges groaning, like a low moan. My bedroom door was the worst. I'd lock it, check twice, but by dawn it'd be ajar, a sliver of hallway darkness peeking in. The lights flickered, sometimes shutting off completely, plunging us into darkness. Mom called an electrician, but he found nothing wrong. I started noticing her silence. She stopped humming while chopping vegetables, her eyes flicking to the ceiling. One night, I was coloring at the kitchen table when my crayon slid across the page, as if pushed. I froze, the air turning cold like someone was breathing down my neck. Noah, trying to scare me, said, "Maybe it's a ghost who hates your drawings." I forced a laugh, but my hands shook. The house wasn't just old, it was awake. I started, sleeping with a flashlight, its beam my only shield against the dark. Noah caught me once, his usual grin gone. "You hear it too, don't you?" he asked. I nodded, and for the first time my big brother looked scared. Weeks bled into months, and the gray house became a cage of fear. I dreaded being alone, especially after sunset. I was convinced there was a woman in the house, though no one else saw her. It wasn't just paranoia. It was a weight, like someone standing inches behind me watching. I'd see shadows dart past doorways, too quick to be tricks of light. One afternoon, while brushing my hair in the bathroom, the mirror fogged up, though the room was ice cold. A face flickered in the glass. Not mine, but a woman's. Her eyes hollow, her mouth a silent scream. I dropped the brush. My scream stuck in my throat. I ran to Mom, tears streaming, but she pulled me close, saying, "It's just your mind, sweetie." Her voice was soft, but her hands trembled. Noah started acting off too. No more pranks, no more swagger. I caught him staring at the attic door one night, his knuckles white. "You ever feel like someone's right behind you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I nodded, my stomach twisting. We stopped playing in the house, sticking to the yard. But even there, the oak seemed to lean in, whispering secrets. I started drawing the woman I felt. Long hair, a flowing dress, always faceless. Noah found my sketchbook and didn't laugh. "I've seen her too," he admitted, pointing to a shadow in my drawing. The house wasn't just haunted, it was hers, and she didn't want us there. By October 1995, I was a shadow of myself, jumping at every sound. The gray house had worn me down, its presence a constant hum in my mind. One night, something happened that I'll never forget. I was in bed, the attic footsteps louder than ever, like boots stomping. Then, I heard a whisper right by my ear, soft but clear, saying my name, Emma. It wasn't Noah or Mom. It was wrong, hollow, like wind through a grave. I felt something cold brush my arm, like fingers trailing across my skin. My body locked up, terror rooting me to the mattress. I forced my eyes to the mirror across the room, its glass glinting in the moonlight. In the moonlight, I saw a shadow, a tall, thin figure with no face, standing behind me. Its form shimmered, edges dissolving like smoke, but it was real, its presence suffocating. I screamed. The sound, tearing through the silence. Mom burst in, flipping on the light, and the figure vanished. I told her what I'd seen, but she said it was a nightmare. Her eyes betrayed her. She was scared too. I refused to sleep alone after that, dragging my blanket to Noah's room. He didn't argue, just scooted over. The house wasn't just haunted, it was hunting me, and that night it had come too close. I started researching at the school library, flipping through old books on ghosts. One page described residual spirits, souls trapped by trauma. Was that her? I didn't know, but I felt her anger, her sorrow every time I closed my eyes. That night broke us. My family moved out a month later and I never went back. We packed in a frenzy, Mom's hands shaking as she taped boxes, Dad's jaw tight. Noah hugged me as we drove away, the gray house fading in the rear view, its windows like eyes watching us leave. I thought escaping would stop the nightmares, but they clung to me. Whispers in the dark, that cold touch, the faceless woman in the mirror. Years later, I couldn't let it go. As an adult, I dug into the gray house's past, scouring library archives and online forums. I learned it had belonged to a woman who died under mysterious circumstances. Her name was Eleanor Gray, a widow who'd lived there after her husband disappeared in 1972. Locals said she'd lost her mind, painting strange symbols on the walls, muttering about keeping the door closed. Some claimed she'd died by her own hand. Others whispered murder. The house was sealed after her death, untouched until we moved in. Eleanor's story haunted me. Was she trapped, her pain bleeding into the walls? Did she whisper my name to warn me, or to pull me into her world? I still hear those whispers sometimes, and I wonder if she's still there, waiting. The gray house taught me that some places hold on to their ghosts, and some ghosts hold on to you. If you've ever felt a presence you couldn't explain, drop your story in the comments. Like and subscribe for more chilling tales. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the cramped 911 dispatch center, a concrete box buried in the basement of the county sheriff's office. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of burnt coffee and old carpet. Sarah Mitchell, a 28-year-old dispatcher with tired eyes and a habit of chewing her nails, sat alone at her console, the glow of the monitors casting shadows across her face. 3 years on the night shift had hardened her to the usual calls. Drunk drivers, domestic disputes, the occasional heart attack, but nothing could shake the unease that settled in her gut every night at 2:47 a.m. For the past week, her headset had crackled to life at that exact moment, delivering a call from an abandoned cemetery on the edge of town. The first time it happened, Sarah thought it was a prank. Faint female voice, fragile as a whisper, came through, repeating, "They're getting closer." The words were laced with terror, each syllable trembling like a leaf in a storm. Sarah's fingers froze over the keyboard as she asked for details. The caller gave an address, Old Hollow Cemetery, a forsaken place off Route 17, overgrown and forgotten. Sarah dispatched a patrol car, her voice steady despite the chill creeping up her spine. But when the officers arrived, they found nothing. No woman, no footprints, just crumbling headstones and silence. Sarah chalked it up to a kid messing around, but the call left a splinter in her mind, sharp and nagging. Tonight, as the clock ticked toward 2:47, Sarah's heart thudded. She glanced at the empty desks around her, the other dispatchers long gone for the night. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. She told herself it was nothing, just fatigue playing tricks. But deep down, she knew better. Old Hollow wasn't just a cemetery. It was a place people avoided, whispered about in hushed tones at gas stations and diners. Stories of vanishings, of lights flickering among the graves, clung to it like moss. Sarah had never believed in ghosts, but something about those calls made her question everything. Right on cue, the headset hissed, a static burst that made Sarah flinch. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the call came through. The same frail voice, barely audible, whispered, "They're getting closer," each word dripping with dread. Sarah's pulse quickened as she leaned into the microphone. "Ma'am, who's there? Can you tell me your name?" she asked, her voice calm but urgent. The background, she heard wind howling and faint footsteps crunching on gravel, like someone pacing restlessly. The caller didn't answer her questions, only repeated the phrase, her voice growing shakier, as if something was closing in. Sarah typed the details into the system, her fingers trembling. She dispatched another patrol, though she knew what. They'd find nothing. Every night officers checked Old Hollow and found it empty. No sign of the caller. But this time something was different. Mixed with the wind, Sarah caught a low hum, almost like a chant, rising and falling in the distance. It wasn't human, not quite, and it sent a shiver through her. She adjusted her headset, straining to hear, but the line went dead after exactly 3 minutes, leaving her in suffocating silence. Sarah pulled up the cemetery's records on her computer, her curiosity outweighing her fear. Old Hollow had been abandoned since the 1970s, its last burial a decade before Sarah was born. But a news article from 1995 caught her eye. A young woman, Emily Harper, had vanished near the cemetery after a late-night walk. The case was never solved, and locals swore they'd seen her shadow among the graves. Sarah shook her head, dismissing the thought. She didn't believe in ghosts, yet the voice, the footsteps, the chant, they were real, and they were pulling her into something she couldn't explain. The next night, Sarah braced herself, her coffee cold and untouched. The clock hit 2:47 and the headset crackled. The same voice whispered, "They're getting closer," but now it was frantic, breaking into sobs. The wind roared, footsteps louder, almost running. Sarah's heart pounded as she pleaded, "Ma'am, stay with me. Where are you?" The caller gasped, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "They're here," she choked out, followed by a piercing scream and a muffled thud, like something being dragged. The line cut off, leaving Sarah frozen, her hands shaking. She replayed the call in her mind, the scream echoing like a wound. Desperate, she called the sheriff's office, begging for a full search of Old Hollow. The officers humored her, but their report was the same. Empty graves, no tracks, no body. Sarah's supervisor, a gruff man named Tom, told her to let it go. "Prank calls happen," he said, but Sarah couldn't. That scream wasn't fake, and the chant she'd heard wasn't a prank. It was something older, darker, tied to the cemetery's secrets. At home, Sarah dug deeper, scouring online forums about Old Hollow. She found a post from a local historian, claiming the cemetery was built on a ritual site, marked by a stone circle hidden among the graves. The post mentioned a symbol, a crescent moon with a star inside, carved into the stones. Sarah's breath caught. During the last call, she'd heard the caller whisper something new, barely audible. "The star, it's glowing." Was it a clue? Or was Sarah losing her mind, chasing shadows in a case that didn't exist? Sarah never heard the voice again, but the silence was worse. The call stopped, leaving her haunted by questions. Had the woman been real? Was she a victim, a ghost, or something else entirely? Sarah requested a transfer to the day shift, unable to face another night alone in that basement. But Old Hollow clung to her, its shadow creeping into her dreams. She saw the cemetery in vivid detail. Cracked headstones, gnarled trees, and a stone circle pulsing with unnatural light. Months later, Sarah visited Old Hollow herself, driven by a need for answers. The cemetery was as desolate as the reports claimed, its air thick with an unnatural stillness. She found the stone circle half buried under weeds, and there, carved into a slab, was the crescent moon with a star. It didn't glow, but it felt alive watching her. Sarah left, vowing never to return, but the image stayed, burned into her mind. That experience changed Sarah. She learned that some mysteries defy explanation, that listening to a cry for help, real or not, carries a weight that never lifts. She kept a journal of the calls, a record of the voice she couldn't save. Sometimes, late at night, she'd wake to the sound of static in her mind, the faint whisper of, "They're getting closer." And she'd wonder, had she been the only one hearing it, or was the voice still out there, calling to someone new? The city's alive at 8 p.m., its pulse a chaotic mix of honking cabs and glowing neon. I'm Sarah, 22, a barista with dreams bigger than my paycheck, navigating Portland's rain-slicked streets after a grueling shift at Brood Awakening. My apron still stuffed in my backpack, coffee stains and all, as I hustle to catch the last bus home. The air smells of wet asphalt and sizzling tacos from food carts. But tonight there's an edge to the city's hum. The streetlights flicker, casting jagged shadows that seem to move on their own, and the gaps between car horns are too quiet, like the city's holding its breath. I tug my hoodie tighter, earbuds dangling. I need my ears sharp. My phone pings with a text from Mia, my roommate. "You good?" "It's getting dark," I type. "Yup, almost there," but my gut churns. I notice a man behind me, his presence like a weight. He's 30 feet back, a shadow in a dark jacket, ball cap pulled low. His hands are buried in his pockets, his stride too steady for a casual stroll. I tell myself it's nothing. Downtown's full of people heading somewhere. But when I steal a glance, his pace syncs with mine, deliberate, like a predator trailing prey. My heart skips, and I grip my phone tighter. The screens glow my only comfort in the growing dark. My pulse quickens, a drumbeat in my ears. I realize this guy's been tailing me for blocks. His cap obscures his face, but his eyes catch the streetlight, glinting with focus, on me. I speed up, dodging a cluster of joggers in reflective vests, their laughter jarring against my panic. I try walking faster, but he keeps up, even crossing the street when I do. He moves like a shadow, silent but relentless, his presence tightening the city around me. The streets, once my escape, now feel like a maze, alleys narrowing, lights dimming. I bolt across a crosswalk, a taxi's horn blaring as I cut through traffic. My breath's ragged, but I don't slow down. A quick glance back, he's closer. Maybe 20 feet, his stride unbroken. My phone's clutched in my sweaty palm, but calling 911 feels drastic. What do I say? Some guy's walking behind me? I fire off a text to Mia. Creeps following me, help. Her reply buzzes, "Stay in the light, I'm calling." I don't stop, my eyes locked on the bus stop's faint glow, a lifeline in the urban jungle. Every step feels like a gamble, every shadow a threat. And I wonder if I'll make it before. He closes the gap. The bus stops a beacon, its metal bench glowing under a stuttering street lamp. My legs scream, but I sprint, the cold air burning my lungs. When I reach the stop, I turn and see him at the corner staring. He's still, a statue in the neon haze of a dive bar, his cap tilted to reveal a smirk that chills my blood. His eyes don't waver, pinning me like a bug on a board. I want to run, but the next street's a black void, and I'm alone except for a homeless man muttering nearby. My phone vibrates. Mia's voice crackles through. "Sarah, where are you?" I rasp. "He's here at the stop." She's yelling, about staying visible when the bus's headlights cut through the dark. The bus pulls up and I scramble on, my hands shaking as I swipe my pass. I collapse into a seat, the plastic cold against my thighs, and peer out the window. He's still there, watching, not moving. His smirk lingers, a promise of something unfinished. The doors snap shut, the bus jerks forward, and I'm carried away, my heart still hammering. The city blurring into streaks of light and shadow. At our apartment, I slam the door, fumbling the locks. Mia's there, eyes wide. "Sarah, what happened?" I collapse onto the couch, words tumbling out. The man, his smirk, the chase through the city. Mia's scrolling X, her face paling. Later I learned there was an attack near that area that night. A woman just a block away was jumped. Her attacker wore a dark jacket, ball cap, moved like a ghost. I'm convinced I narrowly escaped something awful. I don't sleep that night, replaying his eyes, his silence. I quit walking alone after dark, my pepper spray a constant companion. Portland's magic is tainted now, its streets hiding threats I never saw before. I still see his face sometimes, in crowds, in dreams. Trust your gut. It's your first line of defense. If you've ever felt danger closing in, share your story below. Like and subscribe for more tales that'll make you check your locks twice. The city hummed with life as the last subway train screeched into Parkside Station, its brakes hissing like a tired beast. Neon signs flickered above, casting a sickly glow over the cracked tiles of the platform. Mia Torres, a 22-year-old graphic designer with a knack for overthinking, stepped off the train, her earbuds blasting a lo-fi playlist to drown out the world. Her shift at the studio had run late, and now, at 11 p.m., the city felt like a different beast. Its daytime bustle, replaced by an eerie quiet that made her skin prickle. She'd taken the subway home countless times, but tonight, as she exited the station, something felt off. The air was too still, the shadows too deep. Mia pulled her hoodie tighter, her sneakers echoing on the empty platform. She was used to navigating the city alone. Her parents had raised her to be cautious, to always check her surroundings. But tonight, her instincts screamed louder than usual. As she climbed the stairs to the street, she noticed a man lingering near the ticket booth, his face half hidden under a baseball cap. He didn't board the train, just watched her leave, his presence lingering like a bad dream. Mia shook it off, blaming her paranoia on too many true crime podcasts. Still, she quickened her pace, the cold October air biting at her fingers. The streets beyond Parkside were a mix of shuttered storefronts and flickering streetlights, the kind of place that felt safe in daylight, but treacherous after dark. Mia's apartment was a 15-minute walk, a route she knew by heart. Down 4th Avenue, past the diner, then a left onto Maple Street. But as she turned onto 4th, she heard it. The faint scuff of footsteps behind her, deliberate and unhurried. She glanced over her shoulder, and there he was, the man from the station, hands in his pockets, keeping a steady distance. Her heart skipped. This wasn't her imagination. Mia's pulse raced as she turned onto a busier street, hoping the scattering of late-night pedestrians would deter her pursuer. The man stayed behind her, always about 20 yards back, his silhouette a constant in her peripheral vision. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just heading the same way, a coincidence. But when she paused at a crosswalk, pretending to check her phone, he stopped too, leaning against a lamppost, his eyes fixed on her with a cold, unblinking stare. Her stomach twisted. This was no coincidence. She zigzagged through side streets, cutting through an alley to throw him off. The city's pulse faded, replaced by the hum of distant traffic and the echo of her own footsteps. But no matter how many turns she took, he was there, matching her pace, never closing the gap but never letting her out of sight. Mia's mind raced with her parents' warnings. Don't walk alone at night, always stay in well-lit areas. She cursed herself for not taking a rideshare, but her budget was tight, and the subway had always felt safe, until now. Then she noticed something chilling. On the man's jacket, barely visible in the dim light, was a small embroidered patch, a red circle with a black X inside. It looked deliberate, like a marker, and it sparked a memory she couldn't place. Had she seen it before? On a news report maybe, or a flyer? Her fear deepened, no longer just about being followed, but about what this man might represent. She fumbled for her phone, dialing her boyfriend, Ethan, her hands shaking. "Hey, just stay on the line, okay?" she said, her voice low. Ethan's cheerful voice was a lifeline, but even as she chatted about her day, she could feel the man's presence, a shadow that refused to fade. Mia's legs burned as she spotted a 24-hour convenience store, its fluorescent lights a beacon in the dark. She ducked inside, heart pounding, pretending to browse the aisles while keeping an eye on the street. The clerk, a middle-aged man named Javier with kind eyes and a faded tattoo on his forearm, noticed her agitation. "You okay, miss?" he asked, his voice soft but alert. Mia forced a smile, muttering something about needing snacks, but her eyes darted to the window. The man was outside, standing across the street, his cold stare cutting through the glass. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched, his hands still in his pockets. Mia's phone buzzed. Ethan, still on the line, growing worried. "Mia, what's going on? You sound freaked out." She whispered the truth, her voice trembling. "Someone's following me." Javier overheard, his expression hardening. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen guys like him before. Stay here. I'll call you a cab." Mia nodded, gratitude flooding her, but her fear didn't ease. She noticed something new about the man, a faint scar across his cheek, visible when he tilted his head. It felt significant, like a clue to a puzzle she didn't want to solve. As Javier dialed the cab company, the man outside shifted, pulling something from his pocket, a small notebook which he scribbled in before glancing back at the store. Mia's blood ran cold. Was he tracking her? Planning something worse? The store's walls felt flimsy, no match for the menace outside. She clutched her phone, Ethan's voice a faint comfort. but her eyes stayed locked on the man, his scar and that red X patch burning into her memory. Javier hung up, saying, "Cab's 5 minutes out, stay by the counter." But 5 minutes felt like forever when a predator was watching. The cab pulled up, its headlights cutting through the night. Javier walked Mia to the door, standing between her and the street as she climbed in. "You're safe now," he said, but his eyes stayed on the man across the street. Mia gave the driver her address, her hands shaking, and the cab sped off. She glanced back, her breath catching. The man was still there, now at the corner, his lips curling into a strange, knowing smile. It wasn't relief she felt, but dread, like he'd let her go, but only for now. In the cab, Mia's mind raced. She told Ethan everything, her voice breaking as she described the man's scar, the patch, the notebook. Ethan promised to meet her at her apartment, but his words couldn't erase the image of that smile. When she got home, she locked the door, checked the windows, and sat with a kitchen knife until Ethan arrived. The next day, she reported the incident to the police, but without a clear description or evidence, they could only file a vague report. Days later, Mia couldn't shake the encounter. She scoured news archives, driven by a nagging sense that the man was more than a random creep. She found a story from 2 years ago, a string of unsolved abductions in the city, all young women, all last seen near subway stations. One survivor mentioned a man with a scar and a red X tattoo, part of a rumored trafficking ring that was never caught. Mia's heart sank. Had she been a target? Was the notebook a list of victims? The thought made her sick, but it also fueled her resolve to never walk alone again. That night rewrote Mia's life. She'd always been cautious, but now she saw danger in every shadow, every stranger's glance. She stopped taking the subway at night, opting for ride shares despite the cost. She enrolled in self-defense classes, her fear transforming into a quiet strength. Javier became an unexpected ally. She visited the store to thank him, and they exchanged numbers, a small bond forged in crisis. Without his help, she might not have made it home, but the man's smile haunted her. She kept a journal, sketching the red X patch, the scar, every detail she could recall. She shared her story online, hoping to warn others, and found comments from women with similar encounters, men with scars, strange symbols lurking near stations. It wasn't just her. The city was a hunting ground, and she'd narrowly escaped its jaws. Mia's parents, once overprotective, now seemed wise, their warnings a lifeline she'd ignored too long. Sometimes, late at night, Mia would hear footsteps outside her apartment, faint but deliberate. She checked the peephole, finding nothing, but the fear lingered. The police never found the man, and the abductions remained unsolved. Mia wondered if he was still out there, watching, waiting for his next target. Had she been a random choice? Or had he marked her long before that night? The red X, the notebook, the smile, they were pieces of a puzzle she might never solve, a reminder that safety was fragile, and some predators never stopped hunting. Some places sing to you, their secrets woven into the wind, daring you to listen. I'm Ethan, 32, a photographer chasing the raw beauty of the world's forgotten corners. Last summer, I landed in Willow Creek, a Tennessee town nestled in the Smoky Mountains shadow. I'd heard whispers about the Blackwater River, a dark thread cutting through ancient forest, its banks untouched by time. Locals called it a photographer's paradise. Mist rising like spirits, fireflies weaving constellations at dusk. I was hooked. With my camera slung over my shoulder and a flashlight in hand, I headed out one evening in July 2024, chasing a shot that could define my portfolio under a sky devoid of stars. The trail to the river was overgrown, roots snaking across the path like veins. The forest buzzed with life. Crickets chirping, leaves whispering in the breeze. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, cool against my face. I reached the Blackwater, its surface a glassy void reflecting the faint glow of my flashlight. It was mesmerizing, almost sacred, and I set up my tripod, framing the perfect composition. I was lost in the moment. The world reduced to lens and light when a sound shattered the silence. It was a scream, human but not quite, rising from the river's edge. My camera nearly slipped, my breath catching as the sound clawed at my nerves. A cry that didn't belong in this world. My pulse spiked, the scream searing into my mind. It was a sound like a human cry twisted into something unnatural, coming from the river. It echoed, sharp and jagged, like glass breaking in slow motion. I swung my flashlight across the water, its beam swallowed by the dark, revealing only ripples that shouldn't have been there. The forest turned menacing. Trees loomed like sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky, the air suddenly frigid. I tried to rationalize it, a bobcat maybe, or a bird. But the scream came again, closer, its tone a desperate wail that felt alive, aware. I fumbled for my phone, texting Lucas. Heard a freaky scream by Blackwater, you awake? The signal was weak, the message stuck on sending. A third scream erupted, so near it vibrated in my chest, a sound no animal could make. I decided to move closer to the riverbank, my heart pounding with fear. My boots crunched on gravel, each step amplifying the forest's silence, as if it was holding its breath. I cursed my curiosity, that photographer's urge to capture the unknown, but I couldn't turn back. The Blackwater waited, its surface unnaturally still, like a predator lying in wait. I gripped my flashlight tighter, its light my only anchor in the growing dread. I reached the riverbank, my flashlight trembling, its beam slicing through the dark. The Blackwater was a void, its surface refusing to reflect my light. There, on the water, stood a shadowy figure, its form blurry like a smudge against the night. It hovered inches above the surface, its shape too tall, too fluid, like ink bleeding into air. My stomach twisted. Was it human? No, it was wrong, its presence a violation of reality. I shouted, "Hey!" and the figure vanished, but the scream echoed again, now everywhere and nowhere. The sound enveloped me, a chorus of pain and rage that prickled my skin like static. I stumbled, my boot snagging a root, my camera crashing to the dirt. The forest was a cage now, branches weaving a net above, the river a hungry abyss below. I swept my flashlight in arcs, heart hammering, expecting the figure to lunge from the shadows. Nothing. My phone buzzed. Lucas. Dude, get out. Blackwater's cursed. I didn't need convincing. I ran, branches snapping underfoot, the scream chasing me like a living thing. My lungs burned, my mind racing with questions. What was that? What did it want? The trail seemed longer, the forest twisting to keep me trapped. I didn't stop until I hit my car, fumbling the keys, the scream still ringing in my skull. I locked the doors, tires screeching as I sped back to Willow Creek. The next morning, I sat in Rosie's diner, nursing black coffee, my hands still shaky. I told Hannah, the waitress, everything, the scream, the figure, the terror. Her eyes widened, her voice dropping. She told me about a legend, a spirit trapped by the Blackwater bound to the river by some old tragedy. They called it the Whaler, a woman who drowned in the 1920s, betrayed by her lover, her cries luring wanderers to share her fate. I never returned to the Blackwater. I deleted my photos, unable to look at the dark frames. The scream lingers, a sound no human could make, echoing in my dreams. I still hear it sometimes, in the quiet of the night, and wonder what it wanted. Was it warning me or calling me back? The Blackwater keeps its secrets, and I'm not brave enough to ask. If you've ever heard a sound that chilled your soul, share it below. Like and subscribe for more stories that'll haunt your nights. The old Victorian house on Elm Street seemed like a steal when Laura Bennett signed the lease. Nestled in the sleepy town of Willow Creek, its sagging porch and ivy-covered walls promised a fresh start for her and her 6-year-old daughter, Emma. After a messy divorce, Laura craved stability, and the house, with its creaky floors and stained glass windows, felt like a place to rebuild. But on their first night, as rain tapped the roof and Emma slept soundly, Laura felt a chill that wasn't from the drafty windows. The bedroom door, which she'd locked before bed, creaked open on its own, revealing the dark hallway beyond. She froze, her breath catching, and chalked it up to the house's age. Old houses settle, she told herself, pulling the covers tighter. Laura wasn't one for ghost stories. A nurse by trade, she believed in logic, broken pipes, faulty wiring, not spirits. But Willow Creek had a reputation, its history steeped in tales of tragedy and restless souls. The neighbors' sidelong glances when she mentioned the address hadn't helped. As she checked on Emma, tucked under a quilt with her stuffed rabbit, Laura pushed the unease aside. This was their home now, and she'd make it safe. But when she returned to her room, the door was closed again, though she hadn't touched it. Her heart thudded, and for the first time she wondered if the house was more than it seemed. The next few weeks tested Laura's skepticism. At night, the living room lamp flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows across the walls. She called an electrician who found no faults in the wiring. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate thuds echoing from the attic above Emma's. Laura climbed the rickety attic stairs, flashlight in hand, expecting raccoons or a loose board. But the attic was empty, its dusty trunks and cobwebs undisturbed. Her stomach churned as she descended, the air growing colder with each step. Emma started noticing things too. Her favorite doll, left on her bed, appeared in the kitchen the next morning, its glass eyes staring blankly. Laura tried to laugh it off, saying Emma must have moved it in her sleep, but the explanation felt hollow. At night, Laura felt a cold presence in Emma's room, like an unseen gaze watching them. She began sleeping with Emma, her daughter's warmth a shield against the growing dread. The house, once a refuge, now felt like a trap, its walls whispering secrets she couldn't decipher. Laura dug into the house's history, visiting the town library. A yellowed newspaper from 1952 revealed a tragedy. A woman named Margaret, who'd lived in the house, vanished after her daughter's death. Locals whispered of a curse, claiming Margaret's grief had tainted the house. Laura dismissed it as folklore, but the article mentioned a locket Margaret always wore, never found after her disappearance. The details stuck with Laura, especially when she found a tarnished locket in the attic, its clasp engraved with an M1 Knight. The disturbances escalated. Laura woke to a low hum, like a voice whispering words she couldn't catch. The attic footsteps grew louder, now pacing directly above her bed. She grabbed a flashlight, her hands shaking, and climbed to the attic, determined to confront whatever was there. The locket, which she'd left on her dresser, was now in the attic, placed in the center of the floor, its chain coiled like a snake. Laura's breath hitched as the air turned icy, her flashlight flickering. A shadow moved in the corner, not a person but a shape, formless yet heavy with intent. Back downstairs, Emma screamed, her voice piercing the silence. Laura raced to her room, finding her daughter curled in a ball, pointing at the closet. "She's in there," Emma sobbed. Laura flung open the closet door, but it was empty. Yet the cold presence was stronger, wrapping around her like a shroud. Desperate, Laura called a local psychic, Ellen, recommended by a co-worker. Ellen arrived the next day, her face grim as she sensed the house's energy. She confirmed a spirit was bound to the locket, tied to a tragedy that refused to rest. But Ellen revealed a twist. The spirit wasn't just Margaret. It was drawn to Laura, sensing her grief from the divorce, her fear of failing Emma. Laura's blood ran cold. Was the spirit feeding on her pain? Ellen urged her to destroy the locket. But when Laura tried, it burned her fingers as if alive. The house seemed to pulse, doors slamming, lights blazing. Laura realized this wasn't just a haunting. It was a battle for her and Emma's safety. Laura didn't hesitate. She packed their bags, took Emma, and left the house, vowing never to return. They stayed with Laura's sister in a neighboring town, the locket buried in a box she refused to touch. The disturbances stopped, but the experience left Laura haunted, wondering what she'd unleashed. She researched Margaret further, learning her daughter had died in a fire in the house, Margaret vanishing soon after, suspected of arson in her grief. The locket, a gift to her daughter, was all that remained. Laura changed. She became fiercely protective, checking on Emma nightly, her trust in safe places shattered. She shared her story with a local support group, finding others who'd lived in haunted homes, their tales eerily similar. The locket stayed buried, but Laura sometimes felt its pull, a faint whisper in her dreams. Stay. She wondered if Margaret's spirit had followed them, or if her own fears had given it power. The house on Elm Street was sold, but Laura heard the new owners left within months, citing strange noises. Was the spirit still there, waiting for someone new to claim? Or had Laura's pain been the key, unlocking a door that should have stayed shut? Podcast intro fades out. Welcome to Midnight Chills, where we uncover the stories that keep you awake. I'm Abigail, 24 now, but this story takes me back to when I was 12, and my sister Sophie was 10. We're on Midnight Chills because we need to share this to maybe loosen the hold it's had on us for years. It was 2011, and we lived in Salem, Massachusetts, in a house that felt older than time itself. Mom, Margaret, and Dad, Thomas, bought it dirt cheap, calling it a charming fixer-upper. To Sophie and me, it was a playground, creaky staircases, hidden closets, an attic stuffed with forgotten trunks. But even in our kid excitement, we felt it. The house wasn't just old, it was alive, its walls whispering secrets we couldn't yet hear. Our bedroom was on the second floor, its floral wallpaper peeling like dead skin, the air always a little too cold. We'd stay up past bedtime, weaving ghost stories with flashlights under our blankets, daring each other to be brave. Salem's history, witches, trials, ghosts, fueled our imaginations, but we never thought we'd meet something real. One night, as we giggled over a tale about a headless specter, the room changed. The air turned heavy, the cold biting, like winter had slipped inside. That's when we saw her. A woman in a Victorian dress, standing in the corner of our room with no face. Her silhouette was sharp, black lace trailing, but her face was a void, a darkness that swallowed all hope. Sophie's nails dug into my arm, and I couldn't breathe. That first night, we were paralyzed, our eyes locked on the figure. She wore a long Victorian dress, black lace trailing like shadows, but where her face should have been, nothing. Just a void. It wasn't just missing features. It was an absence that sucked in light, a darkness that seemed to pulse, hungry for something we couldn't name. She stood motionless, yet her presence was a scream in itself, pressing against us, stealing the air. Sophie's breath hitched, her hand squeezing mine so hard it hurt. I wanted to yell, to run, but my body wouldn't obey, trapped by that faceless stare. We screamed, flipped on the lamp, and she was gone. The room was just our room again. Twin beds, scattered books, a teddy bear on Sophie's pillow. But the cold lingered, and our flashlight's beam found no trace of her. We ran to our parents, sobbing about the woman. Mom wrapped us in a blanket, her voice soft but strained, saying it was just a bad dream. Dad searched the house, his footsteps heavy, but found nothing. No open windows, no intruders, just the house's usual creaks. We begged to sleep in their room, but they sent us back, promising we were safe. Safe? That word felt like a lie. Sophie and I stayed awake, whispering theories, ghost, demon, hallucination, each one scarier than the last, her faceless void etched in our minds. We prayed it was a one-off, a glitch in our tired brains. But it wasn't. Night after night, around 3 a.m., she'd appear in that same corner. Sometimes we'd jolt awake to find her already there, her dress swaying as if stirred by an unseen wind. Other times, the cold would creep in first, a signal. Then she'd form from the shadows, that void where her face should be seeming to watch us. We learned to stay silent, too terrified to scream, just holding each other, eyes fixed on her until dawn erased her. The clock became our enemy, 3 a.m. A cursed hour we dreaded. We pleaded with Mom and Dad, showing them Sophie's drawings, pages of black crayon, a faceless figure in a dress. They called it overactive imaginations, even, taking away our ghost storybooks. But I saw Mom's hands shake when she tidied our room, and Dad started checking the locks twice. Sophie stopped talking as much, her eyes hollow, and I felt helpless, her big sister failing to protect her. Eventually, we couldn't take it anymore, and our parents moved us out. They never admitted it was the house, but I saw their relief. As we packed, the for sale sign going up before we'd even settled into our new place. Our new house was all clean lines and bright lights, no corners for shadows to hide. But the faceless woman clung to us, her void haunting our dreams, waking us at 3 a.m. with phantom chills. Sophie and I couldn't let it go. As teens, we researched that Salem house, digging through library records and old forums. We learned it had belonged to a woman who died in agony in the 1800s. Constance Harrow was her name, a widow whose children and husband died of fever in 1873. Locals said her grief drove her mad, that she'd clawed her face in the mirror, screaming for release as if she could erase her pain. Constance's story broke our hearts. Was she still there, her sorrow etched into the house? Did she see us, two scared girls, and mistake us for her lost children? We still see her in our dreams, that faceless figure, and wonder if she's still waiting. The Salem house taught us that some wounds never heal, and some spirits never rest. If you've faced a presence you can't explain, drop your story in the comments. Like and subscribe to Midnight Chills for more tales that'll linger long after the lights are out. The suburban streets of Oak Ridge were a patchwork of tidy lawns and glowing porch lights, a place where kids rode bikes until dusk and neighbors waved from their driveways. But at 10 p.m., the quiet took on a different edge, the silence amplifying every rustle of leaves. Hannah Carter, a 19-year-old college freshman, walked home from her part-time job at the local diner, her backpack slung over one shoulder. The night air was crisp, her breath visible in the October chill, and her sneakers scuffed softly against the pavement. She was used to the route, a 20-minute walk through familiar streets. But tonight, something felt wrong. The usual comfort of Oak Ridge felt hollow, like the calm before a storm. Hannah adjusted her earbuds, the faint hum of a podcast keeping her company. She'd always felt safe here, Oak Ridge was the kind of town where nothing bad happened, or so everyone said. But as she crossed Maple Lane, a low rumble broke the silence. A battered white pickup truck appeared, creeping along the road, its headlights dim. Two men sat inside, their faces shadowed but their eyes locked on her. They stared, unblinking, their gazes heavy with something predatory. Hannah's heart skipped. She quickened her pace, telling herself it was nothing, just a couple of guys driving home. But the truck slowed, matching her speed, its engine a menacing growl in the quiet night. Hannah's pulse quickened as she turned onto a side street, hoping to lose the truck in the maze of Oak Ridge's cul-de-sacs. The pickup followed, its tires crunching on the asphalt, always staying just close enough to keep her in sight. She glanced back, catching the men's faces in the glow of a streetlight. They exchanged a look, one laughing softly, the sound carrying a chilling edge. Their expressions weren't curious or casual. They were hungry, like wolves sizing up prey. Hannah's stomach twisted, her instincts screaming to run, but she forced herself to stay calm. She tried a new route, cutting through a park to avoid the open road. No matter how many turns she took, the truck was there, its engine a constant threat. Hannah fumbled for her phone, dialing her older sister, Rachel, her hands trembling. "Hey, just talk to me, okay?" she whispered when Rachel picked up. Rachel's voice, warm and teasing, was a lifeline, but it couldn't drown out the truck's rumble. Hannah noticed something new, a faded sticker on the truck's bumper, a skull with crossed knives. It looked like a gang symbol, something she'd seen in a news report about local crime. Her fear deepened. Were these men just creeps or something worse? The truck's headlights swept across the park, pinning Hannah in their glare. She bolted, her sneakers pounding the grass as she darted toward a row of houses. In a panic, she slipped into a stranger's backyard, crouching behind a wooden fence, her breath ragged. The truck idled nearby, its engine a low growl that seemed to vibrate through her bones. She clutched her phone, whispering to Rachel, praying the men hadn't seen her. Rachel's voice turned urgent, promising to call the police. But Hannah knew help wouldn't come in time. Through a gap in the fence, Hannah saw the truck stop at the curb. The passenger, a wiry man with a shaved head, stepped out, scanning the street. His partner, stockier with a scarred hand gripping the wheel, leaned out the window, muttering something Hannah couldn't hear. The wiry man held a flashlight, its beam slicing through the dark, inches from her hiding spot. Hannah's heart pounded so loud she feared they'd hear it. The skull sticker gleamed on the truck, and she noticed a new detail, a small handwritten note taped to the dashboard, with what looked like addresses. Was hers on it? A dog barked in a nearby yard, startling the wiry man. He cursed, climbing back into the truck, and the vehicle roared off. Hannah stayed frozen, too terrified to move until Rachel's voice snapped her back. "Hannah, are you okay?" She nodded, though Rachel couldn't see, and crept out, her legs shaking. Hannah sprinted the last few blocks home, her lungs burning. She locked the door behind her, sliding to the floor as Rachel's voice reassured her over the phone. But when she peeked through the blinds, her blood ran cold. The pickup was parked across the street, its headlights off, a dark silhouette in the night. The men weren't visible, but the truck's presence was a silent threat, as if they knew where she lived. Hannah called the police, who patrolled the area but found no trace of the truck by the time they arrived. The next day, Hannah couldn't shake the image of the skull sticker and the note. She searched online, her hands trembling, and found a local news article about a series of home invasions in nearby towns. The suspects, never caught, drove a white pickup with a skull emblem, targeting women who walked alone. One victim mentioned a list of addresses, possibly a hit list. Hannah's stomach churned. Had she been targeted? Or was it random? She told Rachel everything, and her sister insisted she stay with her for a while. Hannah agreed, too shaken to argue. Oak Ridge no longer felt safe. Hannah changed her routines, avoiding night walks, her trust in her quiet town shattered. She joined a community watch group, sharing her story to warn others. But the truck haunted her dreams, its engine a constant echo. She'd escaped, but the fear lingered, a reminder of how close she'd come to danger. What if the men were still watching, their list unfinished? The question gnawed at her, a shadow she couldn't outrun. The final echo of that ghostly cry fades, but the shadows of these 10 tales cling to you, don't they? From the masked man's cold stare to the chort's red eyes glowing in a Ukrainian forest, these stories have peeled back the skin of the everyday, revealing the horrors beneath. The house that whispered its sins, the monitor that sang a dead child's grief. Each one leaves a mark, a question that haunts. What else is out there, watching, waiting? Your heart's still racing, and that's just the beginning. The world is full of untold terrors, stories that creep into your dreams and refuse to leave. What's the scariest moment you felt tonight? Drop it in the comments, share this with someone brave enough to handle it, and hit that subscribe button for more nightmares. The darkness never sleeps, and neither do the tales we've yet to tell. Next time, we'll dive deeper, where the whispers grow louder and the shadows take shape. Keep your lights on, check your locks, and stay tuned, because the next story might be closer than you think. Until then, sleep lightly if you dare.